You know that feeling, right? When you're juggling VMs, maybe trying to keep servers happy or dealing with containers, and you just wish things were simpler,
Yeah.
more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like wishing for that magic wand sometimes.
Exactly. Well, today we might have something close to it. We're doing a deep dive into the new Proxmox VE 8.4.
That's right. It just dropped. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just a tiny update. It's built on Debian 12.10 Bookworm, solid base.
Okay.
And it's got a newer Linux kernel too. 6.8.12 is the default now. Plus, there's even an optional 6.14 kernel if you need the absolute latest.
Okay, so let's unpack this. It sounds like more than just a fresh coat of paint.
Hmm.
What's our mission today? What are we trying to figure out for folks listening?
Well, basically, we want to cut through the technical details and highlight what really matters. What are the key improvements? And is this update actually relevant for your setup?
Got it. So helping people decide if hitting that upgrade button makes sense for them.
Precisely. We'll look at the big headline features, the stuff that jumps out.
And the under-the-hood changes, too. The tech stack stuff.
Yep, the foundational upgrades that boost stability and performance overall, stuff you rely on.
All right, let's dive in then. Those headliners. What's the first big one in Proxmox VE 8.4?
Okay, so the first really big development, and I think this is going to be great news for a lot of people, is live migration support for mediated devices.
Mediated devices.
Right.
Okay, that sounds a bit technical. Break that down for us. What can you do now?
Right, so basically, if you're using virtual GPUs,
Yeah.
vGPU or MDEV, sharing one physical graphics card.
Yeah, splitting a GPU across different VMs.
Exactly. Now, you can actually move those running VMs between your Proxmox servers live.
Whoa, live, without shutting them down first.
Without any downtime. That was like a huge limitation before, a real blocker for those setups.
Wow, okay, that is big. I know people have been wanting that for ages. So home labs with GPU needs or businesses sharing expensive cards,
Yeah.
they could just shift active VMs around now. No more scheduling maintenance windows just to move a VM.
None at all. It just brings so much more flexibility.
Yeah.
Better resource management, less disruption. It's a massive improvement for anyone doing that kind of GPU sharing.
Okay, that definitely sounds like a game changer for that group. Huge convenience. What else is making headlines in 8.4?
The second major thing is a brand new API, specifically for integrating third-party backup tools.
Ah, okay, so thinking about software like Veeam, maybe?
Yeah.
Tools people already use for backups.
Exactly like Veeam or other similar solutions, this update is all about making that integration smoother.
Smoother how? Because
Yeah.
I've definitely heard about people having to jump through hoops, maybe needing complex scripts or workarounds.
Right. This new API offers a much cleaner, more native way for those tools to talk to Proxmox's own backup system.
Okay.
And here's a really key benefit. It often means you don't need to give those backup tools root access to your Proxmox host anymore.
And that's a security win, right? Less root access is always better.
Always. It's a fundamental security practice. Plus, it just makes setting up and managing the backups easier. It's more secure, more efficient, and it might even allow for, more fine-grained control later on.
Makes total sense. Better GPU sharing, easier and safer backups. What's number 3 on the headline list? Something about file sharing.
Yes, Virtiofs support. Now, this is for anyone who needs to frequently share folders or files between the Proxmox host itself and the virtual machines or containers running on it.
Okay, so sharing files back and forth.
Think of it like a more direct pipe for files compared to the older ways.
What were the older ways? Network shares, maybe? Like SMB or NFS?
Exactly. And those work, they get the job done. But they can add network overhead, sometimes be a bit fiddly to set up just right, and performance isn't always amazing.
Right.
Virtiofs is different. It's designed for virtualization. It's much more direct, much more efficient.
So faster file transfers. Less system load, maybe?
Pretty much, yeah. Especially noticeable with lots of files or large files. For Linux guests, it works almost out of the box. You set up the shared folder in Proxmox, configure it in the guest, and boom.
Nice. And what about Windows guests? Can they use it too?
Yes, they can. It requires a bit more setup. Inside the Windows VM, you need to install the necessary drivers.
Okay.
So maybe not quite as plug-and-play as Linux yet, but the potential for much faster file sharing is definitely there for Windows users too. If you're moving big files around for development or testing, this could be really helpful.
Okay, those are 3 pretty solid features then. GPU migration, backup API, Virtiofs file sharing. Let's peek under the hood now. What about those core tech updates you mentioned?
Right, the foundations. So first up, QEMU, that's the main engine doing the virtual machine heavy lifting. It's updated to version 9.2.0.
And newer QEMU usually means?
Generally, better performance, maybe some new hardware emulation features, bug fixes, just keeps things running smoothly and potentially faster.
Good stuff. What else?
LXC, for Linux containers, is now at version 6.0.0. Again, this typically brings better stability, maybe broader compatibility for different container setups, just maturing the container side of Proxmox.
Okay, and storage. Proxmox is big on ZFS and Ceph.
Absolutely. ZFS gets an update to version 2.2.7, and importantly, this includes patches that work well with the newer kernels in 8.4, so better compatibility, potential stability improvements for ZFS users.
And for the distributed storage folks using Ceph.
The new stable Ceph release offered with 8.4 is Ceph Squid, that's version 19.2.1, so access to the latest stable features and improvements in Ceph.
Got it. And you mentioned that optional kernel earlier, the 6.14 one.
Yeah, that's there too. Alongside the default 6.8 kernel, the 6.14 kernel might be useful if you have super new hardware that needs the very latest drivers, or maybe there's a specific kernel feature you need.
But it's optional for a reason. Maybe not for everyone.
Right. Generally, the default kernel is the most tested and recommended for stability. The optional one is more for people who know why they need it, maybe troubleshooters, or those on the absolute bleeding edge of hardware.
Okay, stick with the default unless you have a specific reason not to. Sounds wise.
Usually, yes.
So solid updates across the board there. QEMU, LXC, ZFS, Ceph, kernels. Now this is crucial. You mentioned needing to be careful with upgrades, especially around ZFS and Ceph. Let's talk about those warnings.
Yes, very important. Let's start with ZFS. While Proxmox 8.4 includes ZFS 2.2.7, you are not forced to immediately upgrade your ZFS storage pools to the latest features.
Okay, so the software gets updated, but the pool format stays the same unless I choose to upgrade it.
Exactly. And the advice here is be cautious. ZFS pool upgrades are usually one way. And well, history has shown that sometimes brand new ZFS features can have early teething problems.
I think some people might remember things like whole birth or issues with large blocks when those first came out.
Precisely those kinds of things. So the strong recommendation is don't rush to upgrade your pool features. Make sure you have solid backups, always. Read up on the features, maybe wait and see how things shake out in the community.
So enjoy the rest of Proxmox 8.4, but treat that zpool upgrade command with extra respect.
Very much so. Look before you leap. Assess if you need the new pool features right away.
Yeah.
You can always upgrade the pool later when you're more confident.
Got it. And what's the word of caution for Ceph users?
For Ceph, it depends on what version you're coming from. If you're on an older release like, say, Pacific, you can't just jump straight to Squid, the new stable version in 8.4.
Okay, it's not a direct path.
No, it's a multi-step process. You typically need to upgrade from Pacific to Quincy first, then from Quincy to Reef, and only then, once your Proxmox nodes are all on 8.4, can you upgrade Ceph from Reef to Squid.
Wow, okay. Quincy, then Reef, then Squid. That sounds like it needs careful planning.
Absolutely critical. You must follow the official Proxmox Ceph upgrade documentation step by step. Rushing this or skipping steps is asking for trouble with your cluster.
Right. Read the manual, follow the steps carefully. Good advice for any major storage upgrade, really.
Definitely.
So let's shift to the practicalities. How do people actually get Proxmox VE 8.4? What's the upgrade path like?
For most people already running Proxmox, it should be pretty smooth. If you're on any 8.x version already.
Like 8.0, 8.1, etc.
Yep. Then it's usually just the standard system update process using apt.
The good old apt update and apt full upgrade.
That's the one. Or you can kick it off from the WebGUI's update section if you prefer that.
Okay. What if someone's still on Proxmox 7.x?
Upgrading from 7.x is also supported, but it's a major version jump. So while you still use apt, it's highly recommended to read and follow the official Proxmox 7 to 8 upgrade guide first. There might be specific preparation steps or checks needed.
Makes sense. Read the guide for major leaps. What about a fresh install?
Easiest path there, really. You can just download the Proxmox VE 8.4 ISO image and install it directly. Or if you already have a clean Debian 12 Bookworm system, you can install Proxmox VE 8.4 on top of that following the docs.
And clusters. We talked about the Ceph upgrade steps, but upgrading the Proxmox nodes themselves in a cluster.
Yeah, that's definitely doable. The standard practice applies. Upgrade one node at a time, verify it's working correctly before moving to the next one. This maintains cluster availability.
Okay.
Again, the official documentation has detailed procedures for cluster upgrades, and if you have Ceph, you need to coordinate the Proxmox node upgrades with those multi-step Ceph upgrades we discussed. It requires careful orchestration.
So doable, but needs attention to detail, especially with complex setups like Ceph clusters.
Now, before we wrap up, were there any other smaller things, sort of little extras in 8.4 that are worth mentioning?
Yeah, a couple of things. We touched on the optional 6.14 kernel for new hardware.
But it's also worth remembering it might offer better driver support for some existing hardware too. Not guaranteed, but something to keep an eye on if you're having odd issues.
Okay, potentially another tool in the troubleshooting box. What else?
The Virtiofs support we talked about, the fact that Proxmox now has built-in support for migrating VMs that use Virtiofs.
Right. You mentioned that replaces custom scripts.
Exactly. Before, if you used Virtiofs and wanted to live migrate, you often needed your own scripting solution. Now, Proxmox handles it natively. It just makes using Virtiofs so much smoother, removes a management headache.
That sounds like a nice quality of life improvement. Anything else on the backup front?
Just to reiterate on that new backup API, beyond the security win of avoiding root access,
Yeah.
it really opens the door for more flexibility. Backup vendors can potentially create more sophisticated integrations, maybe offering more granular control over backup jobs and restores directly through their tools. It gives administrators more options.
Better security and potentially more powerful backup workflows down the line.
So
I'm good.
Yeah, it's a solid step forward there.
Okay, so let's try and sum up this deep dive into Proxmox VE 8.4. We've got some really key improvements here. Live migration for those shared GPU setups, that's huge.
Definitely a standout feature.
Then the new backup API, making things more secure and flexible for third-party tools.
Yep, cleaning up integrations.
And Virtiofs for faster, more direct file sharing between host and guests.
A very welcome addition for many workflows.
Plus, all those under-the-hood updates, QEMU, LXC, ZFS, Ceph, the newer kernels keeping the foundation solid and performant.
Right. It's a well-rounded update. Maybe not earth-shattering across the board, but definitely stable and delivering some features people have really been waiting for, especially that mediated device migration.
So it feels like a very worthwhile update, particularly if your needs align with those headline features.
I'd agree. It solidifies the 8.x series nicely.
So the final thought then, for everyone listening, considering these changes, the GPU migration, the backup flexibility, the file sharing speed, think about your own setup. What part of managing your VMs or containers feels like it could benefit most from this 8.4 update? Which feature sounds most compelling or immediately useful for you?
That's the key question. And definitely check out the official Proxmox release notes and documentation. They have all the nitty-gritty details.
Absolutely. The docs will give you the full picture for your specific situation.
For sure.
Well, that wraps up our look at Proxmox VE 8.4. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure. Always fun talking Proxmox.
And we'll catch you on the next deep dive.